It is Friday, November 29th. Let's talk PlayStation. Starting off with our PlayStation Plus reminder, the November titles are Neo and Outlast 2. You have a little under a week left to download these games or add them to your library because the December titles have been announced, and it's not looking very good. So it's Monster Energy, Supercross, and then Titanfall 2. Monster Energy being, well, a mediocre game, so nobody's really happy with that one. Now, Titanfall 2, a fantastic game, actually, but a very bad value proposition. This game's been on sale numerous times the last, 6-7 months for, as low as $5. So it's in this really weird spot where most people, if they wanted to try this game, they probably spent $5 to play it. And if you didn't, if $5 didn't convince you to play it, then having it free more than likely won't get you to play it either. Although it is a good game, so at least give it, a 30-minute investment of trying it out and seeing how you enjoy it. At the very least, you can also go into December knowing that the community for the game will be a bit reinvigorated because it is completely open now once it's going to be available for free. But yeah, this is a far cry from the last 3-4 months we've had on PS Plus where the titles they seem to be improving much more dramatically, but this is a step back for sure. Now for our first news story, I wanted to talk about this. It seems pretty divisive, but there's a lot of avenues that we can look at here, and albeit it's an Xbox story, but there's always that PlayStation spin to it. Head of Xbox, Phil Spencer, made some not so favorable comments about VR this past week when speaking to Stevivor. He had this to say about VR on Project Scarlet. I have some issues with VR. It's isolating, and I think of games as a communal, kind of together experience. We're responding to what our customers are asking for, and nobody's asking for VR. The vast majority of our customers know if they want a VR experience, there's places to go get those. We see the volumes of those on PC and other places. He goes on to say, nobody's selling millions and millions of VR units. I think we might get there eventually, but yeah, that's not where our focus is. And on the heels of this, Sony's new head of indies, Shuhei Yoshida, sent out a tweet kind of indirectly responding, stating, "We oftentimes work hard to make things that no customers are asking for them." So let's unpackage this one. It's important to note that Phil Spencer has already responded to some criticism stating, look, we're going to be focusing on games for Scarlet. We acquired all these studios. Let's put out some quality software. We want to make games the primary focus for that platform. Obviously a good thing, right? The other one being that he's still open about it, right? He's pretty much stating, maybe we'll get there, but it's not something we're actively working towards right now. Now, when referencing that there's no millions of millions out there, with PlayStation VR, the recent number that we have is 4.2 million systems sold, which is a few months old now, or maybe closer to a year at this point. And you'd have to figure since that figure, we're probably closer to 4.5, 4.6 million PSVR units sold. Obviously, it's not that much. And if you remember well back into 2015, early 2016, when we were trying to predict PSVR numbers, because it's so hard to really understand how much it would have moved. It was so expensive. It's still expensive. It's still this mega peripheral for PlayStation 4 where you need a PS4 to play all these games. It's kind of its own platform in itself. And that 4.2 million figure is actually the market leader for the VR space when it comes to premium VR headsets, comparing it to Vive or Oculus or any of the other headsets that are out there that are on a more premium scale. But it is a tough number to gauge, and it's quite easy to look at it from the outside of not being a VR player and saying it's not an impressive number. It's only 4 or 5% of total PlayStation 4 sales. There's about probably close to 304 million systems now of PS4 out there now that we're going into the holidays, so we're going to see much more aggressive PS4 sales for the next month. But the thing is, with Phil's comments, it's really a matter of, under any circumstance, he was more than likely going to not be very kind towards VR because clearly the company is not actively working towards it. They have no skin in the game, right? They have no active R&D development. They haven't licensed out the Xbox brand to another hardware maker to make some sort of proprietary headset for Xbox One. They haven't talked about working with Vive or Oculus or anybody else bringing their headsets over, right? I mean, it's clear that they are not doing VR right now. And as such, because they're not doing it, I mean, they can't really sit here and say oh yeah, it's a really great space, it's really cool, we're really interested in the technology, but they pretty much have to downplay it at this point. What I find a bit puzzling is, and mind you, I'm really happy with his comments about really doubling down on software for Xbox One, well, really Scarlet moving forward. That's great. I want them to do really good, I do. And I think it's easy for him to say something like, well, VR is not, not many people are asking for it, and most people are going to be fine with those comments because not many people are playing VR games. But, saying that we want to focus on regular games for Scarlet, it seems kind of half-hearted to me, only because on the other end of the spectrum where we have Sony, they're doing PlayStation VR. They put in the R&D efforts. They put in all the research. They released this big peripheral that has its own library. And they still have this vast library of exclusives and fantastic titles that often get all these awards, Game of the Year. They're loved amongst many fans. It's one of the big contributors of why PS4 sells so incredibly well, why PS3 late into the life cycle finally caught up and started to move a plentiful amount of units catching up to Xbox 360. Sony's had these worldwide studios, they have these great exclusives, and they've done this in tandem with VR development. They've done this in tandem with other efforts like PlayStation Move, the PlayStation Camera, all these other weird little oddball peripherals that come and go, and obviously a lot of them are like them throwing darts to see what really sticks and makes a bullseye, but VR is a kind of a more meaningful approach to games, and you know, Sony did that on top of all their other exclusives that they've had. But when you're not working on any VR content right now and your closest competitor has already launched a product, can you really justify doing VR at that point? Probably not. You're probably going to see even less VR sales on your platform, and it won't really make a whole lot of sense to you. Now, I'd have to imagine the margins on something like PlayStation VR is in the same veins of something like PlayStation Vita, where obviously it's not selling a ton of hardware, but the users typically are very active and buy a lot of software. So there's probably a very good attach rate with PlayStation VR games, where one VR owner will have on average 5, 6, 7, 10 some odd games, probably more than that. Now, I'm not even sure, but that's just a shot in the dark in terms of, I think that probably would make a lot of sense for VR right now, and that's probably what most users are doing. So when you have a low volume product like this, that's usually where you see your returns. Vita is that example. That's why I use Vita as a very good example there. It didn't sell a lot of hardware, but you saw a lot of software developers actually make a killing on Vita. But to not spend too much time on this topic, VR is still in its infancy. It's just a matter of how secondary will it be, and will it make sense for most manufacturers to go into this space, or for some to stay on the outside like Microsoft is suggesting right now. I think that's really what might make more sense in the current landscape of VR, and even the somewhat short-term future of 5 to 10 years, because let's face it, we're still going to use controllers, TVs to play games. Even local play with discs is going to be pretty relevant for the next decade or so. We're still in this very, very heavy transitional period. I don't think VR will ever really be the number one way to play games. It'll always be secondary, but will it be a space where it grows to 5, 10 million some odd units between all manufacturers over a year-over-year period, where it makes sense for everybody to try to come in with their own headset? Or will it stay in this niche area of just a few million a year, where really only some major players can hold that ground, and it wouldn't make sense for Microsoft to stay out of it? And you know, that's the I think that's what makes more sense right now when it comes to this conversation. Moving on, we have a somewhat minor update on Dreams getting a retail release. If you remember, we talked about Shop 2 tweeting out a link to a listing for Dreams with a release date of February 14th. That was quickly removed. Well, the Australian Ratings Board has rated Dreams as PG, implying that the game will in fact get a retail release at some point. Now, I will say, the Shop 2 link was one thing. The ratings, however, is something completely different altogether. Games don't get rated if they aren't getting released at retail soon at some point. It's just the thing, right? They don't rate games that don't exist. So this adds a good amount of validity to Dreams getting a proper release in stores at some point. Next up, we have the annual PlayStation Awards coming this Tuesday, December 3rd, except something's much different this time around. Usually, PlayStation Awards, it's a Japanese show. They don't add English or anything like that. It's very much just an award ceremony. That's it. No announcements or anything like that. But this time, Sony's making it a point to broadcast it on their main channel. There will be English. They are labeling it as the 25th anniversary, because it will be the 25th anniversary of PlayStation. So they're kind of making it a pretty big deal here. Now, what will happen? Will we see anything major come out of this? I would say no. Just because there's nothing going on. I mean, I know that we have PS5 coming. There's the 25th anniversary, but there's nothing for Sony to really announce. This is an award ceremony. I think this is just them unifying the brand, like they've been talking about, the globalization efforts. So just kind of putting this show out there between all regions, letting everybody be able to watch it, making it very accessible. I think it's still probably in all likelihood just an award ceremony, and nothing major is going to come out of it. Their developers are very busy on PS5 games, or their remaining PS4 titles. We've talked about that at great lengths at this point, so I wouldn't get caught up in anything major coming out of this. If anything, maybe you could see a special edition console of some sort. They've done that with the 500 million one, with the 20th anniversary edition one. You know, that's not unheard of. Maybe they'll do something like that. Maybe that's why they're making it a point to say the 25th anniversary. It's, you know, you can watch it everywhere. I mean, it's not like we're trying to understate how important the 25th anniversary is. It's just that it's in a very weird spot where they're not ready to talk about PS5. We know what all of their developers are doing, so there's really not much room for them to say anything beyond what they've done with Wired.com articles. We're waiting for a proper reveal of PS5 in February, so I don't expect PS5 here. This award ceremony has traditionally been just that, an award ceremony. So again, I don't get your hopes up. I would, at the very least, or at the very most, you'd see a special edition console or something. Maybe you could see some little small announcements in terms of a downloadable title, maybe some kind of old PS2 game getting a remaster or something like that, right? But it's not anything major, but just keep that in mind. Coming December 3rd. I'll be on Twitter tweeting about it if anything cool happens from the event, but just keep your expectations in check. Moving on, we have a small update on the Final Fantasy VII Remake, being that the game's director, Tetsuya Nomura, has confirmed the next entry is already well underway in development. Remember, the first game that we're getting in March 2020 will just be the first part of the regular Final Fantasy VII storyline, being that it's just the Midgar section of the game. This is a multi-series entry that they're doing to encompass the entire Final Fantasy VII storyline. So he said just that much, that the next entry is already in development. We already have discussed that this is just for PS4 right now, although they've said it will be playable on PlayStation 5. We don't know if that's them referring to a native port or just the fact that PS5 is backwards compatible. But once this second entry is done, I mean, PS5 is already well going to be released at that point. So part 2 of the Final Fantasy VII Remake is more than likely going to be available on PlayStation 5 day and date with the PS4 version. I'd imagine the second entry will still receive a regular PlayStation 4 release. They do have all the assets built. You know, they've already got all the basic groundwork laid out here. Now, mind you, the first part's just Midgar, right? So they got to build a lot more for the second and third part, but there's at least a good foundation. So there's got to be a decent turnaround on the next one, which would hopefully come out 2022. I think would be the safest bet, but because of that means that the third entry would be placed in 2023 or 4, so that'll probably be just a PlayStation 5 release straight up. That's even assuming it is 3 games, but actually good segue to the next one, Cyberpunk 2077. Again, we touched on this one in the PS5 confirmed games, rumored games video. They've given us a slight update here, just saying that you're not going to get a Cyberpunk 2077 on PS5 at launch. So they more or less mapped that around November 2020. That's when we're expecting PlayStation 5 and Scarlet. And they more or less confirmed we're not going to be working in that time frame of releasing a game there. They said it's doable to do a next-gen release. They're all but confirming it, right? They're not really outright stating, yeah, you'll see the game on next generation hardware, but they're saying with what we're working on and in that release time frame, don't expect anything around there. So if you are like in this weird spot where you're thinking about not buying the game and just waiting a year for next gen, you might want to just buy the game when it comes out early next year for PlayStation 4. Now for these next 2 items, I want to give you some updates on previous rumors that we've discussed. I try to make it a pretty good habit here of revisiting old stuff and debunking them or seeing if they were true or not. I know it's so easy for a lot of other sites or videos to cover something but then just put it behind them. We try to make that a habit here, so let's discuss this. I'm seeing not many people talk about the update on the cartridge patents that we've discussed the last 2 weeks here. It looks like this is once again for those lineup of Sony Japan toys where they're like little automized robotics learning tools for children. So there's this trailer that Sony posted, and you can see the cartridge being used there. And so to be honest though, from the digging I did, there's no like actual confirmed relation to this patent being this little cartridge, although you kind of have to assume that's the case. So yeah, I mean, and this is what's so funny is that this is the second time this has happened, because last year was the cartridge patent that had that little circular hole in it, and that was for the exact same lineup of toys. So this may be the exact same thing, right? Where this lineup of toys has been mistaken for something for PlayStation, because it is. That previous one too was filed under Sony Interactive Entertainment, so that's why it's so easy to look at it and wonder what this could be for PlayStation hardware, but that's not the case. Now, keep in mind though, I mean, so many people are seeing this now and going, oh great, so there's no proprietary SSD expansion storage. Maybe they'll just use USB extended storage. Now, this doesn't dispel the fact that we're going to get proprietary expandable storage at some point. PS5 has proprietary SSD tech inside of it. That much is fact. So in any way, shape, or form of expanding the storage on PlayStation 5 is probably going to be proprietary on Sony's terms. And I don't know where people are getting this idea that PS5 will support external HDDs. Kind of defeats the purpose of the marketing push that PS5 is going to have, which is load your games, no load times, save states, start and stop immediately. Bringing in any kind of traditional spinning hard drive disk is not going to play to that. And in fact, I would even say it would be in Sony's interest to not allow that, even in a more archaic manner of allowing HDD expandable storage, but you're just archiving your games on it, right? So if you want to access those, because you're not going to be able to play the games off an HDD, it's not going to happen. The games are going to be all developed around SSD as a standard, so they're not going to play off an HDD. Just get that out of the way right now. So the basic theory is that they'll allow HDD expandable storage, but you'd still have to copy that game over to the SSD when you want to play it. The problem with that is that just defeats the whole purpose of PS5 inherently, and I don't think it really makes a whole lot of sense for Sony to even allow that, because why would you need to do that in premise, right? In practice, why would you even want to archive your games on an HDD, unless you're just really picky about not wanting your games sitting in the cloud or sitting on Sony's download list for the PlayStation Store if you're worried they're going to get pulled or something like that. But even when a game is pulled from the store, you still have a download link if you've purchased it prior. There's just not much incentive to archive it on an HDD when you could just download it from the PlayStation Store or just reinsert your disc and install it that way. You know what I mean? At some point, there's going to be a process of waiting. And so why would you go through the trouble of connecting something to your PS5 and loading all your games on this thing that is still going to have to do some sort of file management of moving the game over to that SSD so it becomes easily accessible and playable to the extent of how Sony wants PS5 games to play and actually function. Despite the fact that this patent is out the window, which, by the way, the patent was still registered in Brazil, I believe, and this is for a line of Japanese toys. That seems a bit weird as well. Not sure what to really make of that. But regardless of if this patent was or was not correct or wasn't for PlayStation 5, there will be proprietary SSD storage in PlayStation 5. If Sony allows expandable storage, it will still be proprietary, and the fears are still there of them offering something that's vastly more expensive than what we've been used to. Now, the other update I want to talk about, and I wasn't going to do this, but I'm seeing so many other websites pick this up. There's other videos out there, and I don't want to be in this weird scenario where I say I'm the best PlayStation news, reviews, and updates, and then I'm not talking about what appears to be major leaks and major rumors regarding PS5 and all that stuff. So I'm going to let you know why I'm not talking about this. That Twitter account, PS Erebus. Now, I covered them initially a few months ago, one of the first ones to really talk about this account because they correctly guessed well, I say guessed, but they correctly leaked The Last of Us Part 2 release date, which made me look at their timeline, and there were some weird inaccuracies and odd tweets in there, but one of them stated, hold on to your PS1, PS2, PS3 software, implying that there's full backwards compatibility on PlayStation 5, and I took that information alongside all the other patents we've had with software emulation, and that's the story that I ran with. But beyond that, I did my due diligence. I reached out to this individual. I said, you know, would you talk to me? Tell me where you got your information from. I said you could speak on anonymity with me. I wanted to verify either employment or where they got the information from, right? I did the due diligence. They did not respond to me. Now, if you look at their ad replies too, they're not responding to anybody else. And this past week or so, they've been sending out some tweets once again talking about keeping your old PlayStation software. The big one was that they said, oh, PlayStation 5 is coming November 20th, 2020 at a $500 price tag. I absolutely did not want to touch that and run with that story. You want to know why? Because that's not a good guess. In fact, anybody can make that guess. The $500 price tag has been floating around for quite a long time now. Anybody can run with that. And to be honest, most of us think it's $500. If it is $500, I'm not going to give any sort of credit there. And then the November 20th, again, there's no credit there. They have a good shot at being right because anybody has a good shot at being right. All you gotta do is pick a Friday in that November. You've already got a 25% chance, assuming that it's a $500 price tag. It's just a very good guess. And it's so far away to where whenever we do get that release date, that account can just get rid of those tweets or whatever, whatever they're doing, right? They just seem very weird. I'm still watching the account. If it gets something right, then we'll talk about it again. But from this point forward, from this video, I'm not giving them the time of day anymore or any more coverage. I tried to reach out to them. They didn't want to talk to me. It's just what they tweet is so weird. I don't know. I'm over it. You know what I mean? So I want to, at the very least, either label titles appropriately as rumor or try to provide a lot of information and reason as to why I'm covering the rumor I'm covering, and I'm going to explain to you why I'm not doing this one anymore. So just throwing that out there. Now, with all that out of the way, yes, it was a very slow news week, not a whole lot going on, but it's time to get to Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway where one of you can win a $10 PSN code. I'd like to congratulate this user right here. I'll be sending you your code very shortly via email or Twitter. Now, if you would like to win a $10 PSN code, follow the link down below. We do this every Friday on Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm trying to pay for your games. Supporting this channel in a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week. Those are all the news stories I want to talk about you all from this past week. And as you may have seen, I did get the editing done on time. The PlayStation 3 documentary went up this past Tuesday. Thank you so much for the overwhelmingly kind comments. I really enjoy doing those really super long, in-depth discussion topics, especially the PS3, the cell processor, Ken Kudragi, the system's slow and steady redemption. I love that console, man, so that was a great video to do. Support on patreon.com is always appreciated for that as well. Just helps me justify the time with those really long videos because they take just so long to make. But also, this coming Tuesday, so that is the PlayStation Awards. Don't expect much. But, keep your eyes peeled, and I'll be on Twitter at Mystic Ryan to either talk about that or what's coming up, which we may be doing 2 videos this week, one being an unboxing, one an extended discussion topic that I don't want to reveal just yet because, in all honesty, I don't even know if I'll be doing it. But might be 2 videos, and that's it. So that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Badecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.